What's going on, everybody? Alexa off. What's going on, everybody? Wilson here with Nothing Changes Until You Do, your spiritual hype man, and I hope all is well with you, and I hope you're enjoying the content. I want to make you guys aware that like the content comes from things that I've experienced, and then the things that I'm going throughout these particular days. So like you're getting some fresh content, and then just figuring out like life, like how life is happening to me, and certain things that I would assume relate to what's going on with you, right? As like I've said before, I feel like we're just all fucking human beings in this world, in society, structured society, that we're just trying to fucking figure it out. Like we're trying to figure out exactly what the fuck do we want, what do we want to feel, how do we want to do it, while still having to do everything and laundry. So if you haven't heard the last episode, go ahead and check that one out. It was a pretty good one. I feel like it was a good one. Oh, I guess the last one was the cupcake lady. That was a really good one too. But doing the laundry was just a good thought in terms of, realizing that the laundry always gets done, which reminds me I have to go do my laundry today because I don't have anything else to wear, any shorts or clean underwear. But, too much information. I digress. Let's talk about, let's say, this one. I really want to talk about what happened the last couple of weeks. Okay. And again, remember, just life in essence is just a situation of an accumulation of situations and decisions that we make over time. And it's these decisions that we make that then create our outcomes. And then that over a long period of time, your average, that's what you get is your life, and obviously the life expectancy, I think for, anybody in the U.S. is like, 73, 74, 78, like around those. So, how old are you right now? And then how many years do you have left, right? So you have, think about that, okay, on your drive home or drive to work or whatever you may be doing. Like, think about how much actual time you technically have left. And it may sound like a lot, but it's really not, because like for most of us that are probably around our, 20s and 30s, like that shit went by pretty quick, right? Like next thing you know, you're fucking 30 years old. Obviously it's 30 years, but still it's pretty fucking quick. So, consider that shit, consider the people around you and don't take it for granted. So, I quit being a stepdad. I want to talk about that. So let's see. How do I want to put this? About 7 years ago, I met Patty. Patty has 4 great kids. 4 kids. Great. No, they're awesome kids, man. Obviously everyone's got their own shit. So like they're good kids. I met them when they were obviously younger, right? 7 years ago. And then that's when Patty and I decided to become a unit, become one, get together. And so, 7 years ago, and I've talked about this way before, like I don't want to say totally different, but there's definitely a lot of levels of myself that, it is different, right? Or are different, when it comes to the person that I am in terms of how I make my decisions, the actions, the reactions, things like that. And don't get me wrong, I'm still fucking working through them because, it's tough. It's tough to not react in certain situations, especially if that's how you grew up or if that's just kind of your, the thing that you've been doing for quite some time. So, when we first got together, like I've always had the nurturing side to it. Like I have 2 younger brothers. My mom was a single parent, and then she had like Jeff, and then Jeff, and then Mark, and then, like for the longest, with Jeff, like there wasn't another like male figure. Like there was, the guy that the bio dad, the guy that fucking impregnated my mom with Jeff, was also married and had another fucking life, and he bounced on us. Well, he bounced on them, right? Because like I never really liked him from the get go. But Jeff and I, like I took that big brother / father figure role, and then Mark somewhat as well. But Pops was around, with Mark. However, I've always had that. I had like innate nature that like wanted to take care of my little brothers. Those guys are the homies, and I'm going to take care of them. So, meeting Patty with four other kids, one of them, the oldest one, was, already off on doing college and masters and stuff like that. So, he's got his life together doing his stuff. Successful going through his journey, which is great. Met him. He's great. Super respectful. Always had a good relationship with him. But Patty also had 3 other kids at the time, and they were a little bit younger, right? So I stepped into that role, and I felt like I was a natural in it, at the same time, in terms of being able to understand what kids need in certain areas, and what is right, what is wrong, being somewhat nurturing, and also just being I don't want to say discipline, like a disciplinary, but yeah, a disciplinary, in certain aspects of things that, like, at this age they should already know how to fucking do their laundry and things like that, because I did it. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't have a problem doing laundry or cooking and cleaning and doing all that stuff, because like it was just part of what I had to learn, at the age that I had to learn it. So there are certain things that I brought to the table that I feel like I presented or I influenced. There you go. Influence thoughts, emotions, actions, outcomes. Influence thoughts, emotions, actions, and outcomes. So there were things that I influenced early on. But again, I feel like the way that I approach certain times or certain situations, I obviously probably reacted or acted in a manner that was probably very similar to my mom, in terms of like getting upset, getting angry, yelling and screaming. So there was a lot of that, right? Like there was a lot of that early on, especially when there was alcohol involved. And again, I don't want to paint the picture that like I would always get wasted and then start yelling at the kids. That wasn't it. It's just sometimes that not being 100% coherent, or not even coherent, but like under the influence, right? Like you can react, right? Not anything where it would like put them in any harm, like in any harm. All right. So let me just say that for purposes, it's like they weren't put in any harm whatsoever. 'Cause like, obviously I know there was always a line, and from where I came from and things like that, nothing that I would want to cross the line and things like that. There were a few times where yelling and screaming, where I either yelled or screamed, and there was a particular incident that it was like on a Thanksgiving day with the second oldest, where I thought there was a line of disrespect that that was crossed, and yeah, I got upset, I got frustrated, I yelled, I screamed, and so unfortunately in that situation, at that point, he decided to like move out and go live with his bio dad. And that was kind of devastating. That was like a huge situation, and like a big momentum. I don't want to say change, but it was definitely a situation that has affected Patty, or I would say still affects Patty, or has affected the relationship in a way that now it's a lot better. And we've discussed it and talked about it, and obviously apologized in both ways of getting to that point. But I feel like in that moment, that was like a huge thing that like affected everybody in that situation, right? So again, I think it probably could. I definitely could have handled it a lot differently. I would say that because of the way I handled it, obviously there was a major effect, in the family, or there's a major effect along those lines. And to this day, like I don't. But here's the thing. Even though it's a major situation, I feel like there's certain times that, again, once we start growing and I guess progressing in terms of our thought, like it's very similar to me. Like when I had resentment towards my mom until like I was, a couple years ago, it's going to take time. And I think the other thing to keep into perspective is perspective, right? Because now that we're going through our experiences in terms of the experiences that we're going through as like an adult or parent or step parent or, et cetera, we see it as that, and sometimes I've forgotten that like I was at 16 or I was 17 or I was 18, I was 22, 23, 24, whatever, fill in the blank. And of course everyone's different, right? And of course everyone's got their own way of going throughout, especially through adolescent. But there's a factor of just remembering and having the perspective that these young individuals, and this is what I've learned and I've started progressing in, is just remembering the fact that they're still young at 16, 17, 18 years old. And, and again, I think society creates a certain level of like acceptance of like, what they should and shouldn't do. And I think between school and other influence and stuff like that, it's like, you get some of these young cats that like, everyone's, and I think it's the same thing. It's generational thing. 'Cause I remember back when like, my dad or like grandparents would be like, I can't believe this young society is getting away with this bullshit. So it's just, I feel like it's a cycle thing, but going back to the stories, just I feel like perspective of, your kids, your children, stepkids, or whoever's in that perspective, just understanding that, like, where are they in their developmental stage of being a human, right? Or where are they right now? And then how can you work on speaking to them or communicating to them in a way that they can connect it, right? Instead of like yelling. Like today was a perfect example. We had the landlord over. He was helping fix a couple things, thank goodness. and the homie Rudy's back, right? Like our 18, 19-year-old, he's back. Patty's 19-year-old, but see how I reference it as ours, because that's how I see the homies. So outside playing soccer, throwing the football around, that's fine. But then he's throwing like the soccer ball on the roof, and I'm like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, the landlord is here. Why are we throwing the soccer ball on the roof? So I go outside. And I'm like, hey, rabble, 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 rabble. Like the way I approached it, I was just like, bro, what the fuck are you doing? Like, the landlord is here. Stop fucking throwing the ball. Stop fucking throwing the ball on the roof. And so he said, oh, my bad. And then so he obviously did. I came back in, and then like while I was on the computer doing shit, like then I prospectively, like, it was just like lingering in my back. And I was like, man, could I have, like, me going out there and approaching it in that way? I think, like it affected him somehow, right? Subconsciously or like consciously, it doesn't matter. Like the way I approached that situation and the way I reacted and how I said it, even though I didn't get crazy mad or I wasn't yelling and screaming, but like it was just like, hey, right? Versus like, hey man, listen, I don't know if you know this, but like the landlord's here, so don't fucking throw the ball up on there. It's just a different tone, different frequency. So that was something that that caught my mind today. Like, I was like, man. So then after I went back out and I explained it to him and I shared that moment with him, and I was like, hey man, like I came out here and I was like that towards you, and I just felt like I could have probably said it another way. So I'm working on not reacting in certain ways and making sure like, we can have great conversations without it absolutely coming out like, blah, 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 So that was one. So going back to the story, there's been lots of great experiences with the kids. There's also been, obviously outside influences, because they also spend time with like their bio dad, and that's kind of like a whole nother fucking story that probably not going to talk about it right now. At some point, maybe. But between that influence and then just my thought, I feel like it's two different camps, right? Like what I've explained to them before. It's like, hey, it's like two different soccer teams with two different, expectations as well as standards in terms of how we play and practice. And so that was always something that like was tough, because like when they would come back, then they would come back from the other soccer camp, and I'd be like, yeah, that's not how we roll here. That's not how the Wopats roll. So I felt like that has always been an issue in terms of like differences among that, and then obviously how the kids interpret what's good, what's easy, what's not easy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we've had things like that. And then, I feel like there's been times where because of the way that I've been, right, I want to take some responsibility for it, because of the way I've been or how I've reacted or how I react in certain situations with the homies. And I feel like that caused their ability to, or that caused something inside of them to like see me as like not the funnest, coolest stepdad in the world. Because there's like, I would say that there's different, like there's that standard for me, right? Like there's a level of respect, there's a standard, I would say there's some sort of discipline that comes from me in terms of like, yo, like, let's get shit done. You guys want to succeed, we got to do X, Y, and Z, let's keep crushing. Like, let's just not fuck around, right? And I feel like that's what I bring as just like me to the kiddos. And I feel like sometimes that, in terms of their age, I'm like, man, they were young, like super young. So yeah, so those are, again, those are things where I feel like contributed to maybe the distancing of like not wanting to really be around myself or interacting as much as maybe someone else in a different situation would be, or like myself and Pops. Like I love Pops. Pops was my step Pops. but I don't really think of him that because, but again, my situation was different. I didn't want to hang around with my bio dad. I don't want to be there at all. And Pops stepped in and he was my dad. So like, I figured that was, everyone's a little different. So in terms of like quitting stepdadding, I don't want to say I quit. Like I'm still here to support them. I don't think they see me as like a stepdad per se. Like I don't think they'd use that vocabulary. But I feel like there's been such ups and downs and situations and thoughts and influences that has influenced them, not only our camp, but the other camp and different things that like, just, just it has caused somewhat of a separation, right? Like I feel like it's easier for Patty to go out and celebrate some of their birthdays like without me, just because like there's like, I don't know, there's like a weird feeling or vibe of like understood like, hey, it's Wilson, so we gotta like be careful, or like, whereas and I would say the same thing, like vice versa. When I go out there, I'm just like, what the fuck are you guys doing? Like, why are we even having this conversation, or why are we even talking about this? So, it is what it is for now. I think for Patty though, like what I've tried my hardest to do is to be supportive in a way that the relationships, like her relationships with her boys, go in a positive direction, right? Like I don't want to be the bad guy, as sometimes throughout the last couple of years I've been in certain situations, and I've also been mislabeled in certain times. But that's where the two things come in. What being like understanding the perspective, like, hey man, these kids, these young cats are not gonna be ready to understand and perceive all these things yet, because they're just at the age that they are, where they're developed and like what they're thinking about. It's not where they need to be in order to like see what's actually happening, and then seeing these things through, to figure out exactly like, hey, this guy's pretty fucking awesome, in certain areas, right? But everyone's got a different perspective and a different situation. So, I guess that's it. I don't want to keep this one. It's already 17 minutes in. But yeah, that's something that I've gone through. That's something that, if you're a step parent or even a parent, it's just like, I would say the main three things is keep the perspective that obviously they're still kiddos and they're young. Don't use that as an excuse though. That's the thing is like, a fine line between what's the excuse point and then what's the really like understanding the perspective that maybe they're not perceiving it, they're not understanding it yet. And how can we get to that level of showing them and influencing them in a way, in a way that can get them to think or see it in a manner that makes sense. And it may take a while, it took me a shit ton of years before I put myself in my mom's perspective to understand, what she was going through and then, accept it. So that's pretty much it. I would say, yeah, perspective. If they're still kids, there's kids, and then vice versa. Like again, if something that you had growing up with either a step parent or a parent or something like that, give yourself that perspective as well as, what were they going through, and hopefully maybe that's something that you can use to move forward and let go of some shit and mend some relationships and or keep it rolling. All right, homies. I appreciate you guys. Thanks for listening. Keep sharing it, man. We'd appreciate it if you just share it. If there's one that really hits home and you want to share it, don't be afraid to share it with people. All right. If anything, I'll see you guys on the next one. Don't forget, it's just about the thoughts in our head. It's the influence, the thoughts, the emotions, the actions we make, the decisions we take in those situations that create our outcome that ultimately over a long period of time or a short period of time is our life. So keep crushing it. And don't forget, nothing changes until you do. Peace.